All right, welcome in everyone. UGA football live on a Thursday night. It is game week, Artie. It is our second show of the week, and I'm feeling a little different energy today. All right, fall's in the air. All right, just a couple of days, baby. We get prime time, not prime time football, but prime football. Georgia-Clemson at noon, number 1 versus number 14. First matchup since 2021. That was a banger of a game. We get another chance to see these two teams and really the only two coaches to win a pair of national championships in college football right now, active. All right, so this is a huge matchup. Can't wait to wake up early Saturday morning, get some game day in, right? Get the juices flowing, get an early breakfast, and sit down for the next 12, 13 hours. That's the plan, Artie. It's good to have you back, former Georgia tight end, joining us here, man. How are you feeling entering this Saturday season opener, baby?
Man, fall is like it's a special time of year. It's always been my favorite time of year for so many reasons. I grew up in my grandfather was my hometown's high school football coached for 35 years. So like I had a ritual of it was Dartmouth High School, whoever they were playing that week on Friday night, roll that into Saturday, and I would just sit there in front of the TV watching College Game Day on ESPN and just watch college football from 12 until whatever Pac-12 team was playing Hawaii week 1, because that was always a matchup, and it was like 2 a.m. And back then it was a little different. There was all regional cables, and so you had your kind of like local voices that you would adhere to each week. But I think football, man, it's the best season, it's the best sport, and the months really still August, so we're still summer, but like this Labor Day through Thanksgiving, to me, man, you can't beat it. It's the best, in my opinion.
Absolutely. We got a couple of games I'm really interested coming up here at 8 after we get off in Colorado, North Dakota
Oh yeah.
State, right? And you
Hmm.
got North Carolina, Minnesota. All right, both of
Hmm.
those games interesting. I love Omari Hampton from North Carolina. But besides the point, guys, thanks so much. If you're watching on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube at the Pulse Sports Network, thanks for joining. We're going to get some pregame info in here. We also have a special guest. All right, total 334 tackles as a dog in his career. He'll be joining here in just a moment, so stay tuned for that. Artie, I want to start it off with a little bit of news updates and really from the NFL. Dogs in the NFL, get through these
Hmm.
quickly, but rosters are beginning to be finalized here in the NFL ahead of the season. Kendall Milton, Rosemary Jackson, Dejon Edwards, Mel Walthour, they were waived, but Kendall Milton signed with Cincinnati, which is really good for him. Jake Fromm was cut from the Lions, but he signed back with their practice squad. Lewis Seen, who's about to sign with the Jets, change of heart apparently, end up signing with the Buffalo Bills. And then maybe my favorite part of this, and I think everybody listening who bleeds red and black will love this too, Stetson Bennett made the Rams' initial 53, which is really impressive considering he took a year off, came back, threw 4 picks in one preseason game this year, and Sean McVay and that staff saw enough in him to bring him in and sign him to the actual 53 roster there. And he'll serve as backup to Stafford while Jimmy G serves a 2-game suspension, right? So he might even – I don't want anything to happen to old Matt, but something does happen, we might see some Stetson Bennett in the NFL for the first time.
Man, you got to give credit. First off, all those guys that made a roster, practice squad, in my opinion, is a roster because you're out there grinding every single day, and there's only a finite amount of spots, and there's a lot of people who got sent home and currently do not have a job in the NFL. So shout out to all those guys who made it, particularly those rookies fulfilling a lifelong dream. Congratulations. But Stetson, man, you got to just, if there is one adjective or characteristic trait that I can use to describe Stetson, is he is freaking resilient, man. Right? Resiliency is his thing. It's a trait that if you have it and it's just innately part of who you are and your like fiber as a human being, like, man, he was going to do well no matter what he does in life just because of who he is. But I don't know what all happened or why he took a year off. They said non-football related injury, but clearly, whatever it was, he got his mind back on track. He got his mental's right, his physical's right, and yeah, man, like he effectively missed his rookie year, came out second year with no reps, right? Because he's my assumption is he was away from the football team, not practicing.
He was.
And yeah, man, 53-man roster quarterback. You think about that. There's probably only, let's say 53 and 53. That's 106. And then probably half of that. There's less than 150 quarterbacks, NFL quarterbacks in the world right now, and he's one of them. That's pretty freaking cool.
Yeah, that's awesome for him, dude. I hope he gets a little opportunity this year, but like I said, I hope Matt stays healthy as well. Let's touch on this.
They'll be good if Matt stays healthy.
And Artie, we didn't talk about this pre-show, and I don't have it in the notes, so I'm going to throw in a curveball a little bit. I wonder if you saw this, but following in kind of the Big Ten's footsteps, they're the first collegiate league to do this, but institute mandatory availability reports / injury, basically injury reports each week. Now, this is just for conference matchups, which is why we don't have one right now. And they're supposed to be reported on Wednesdays, and then it's updated every day. And then game day, it's either like out, available, or questionable, I believe. So that's really interesting. And here's my take on it. Actually, I'll take my take for this situation straight from Kirby Smart himself. I actually got him on the phone this week. We talked about the game, some things I can't disclose, unfortunately. We met at his house there in Bogart, did some fishing and just talked this through. But this is what he told me about the SEC injury reports coming down the line.
Hopefully I don't know how long it's going to be. He's got a dinged up injury that hopefully we're able to get him back from, but don't know how long it's going to be. I mean, there's a chance, you never know, but he's dinged up. So I'm hoping we can get him back as soon as possible.
We just need to get him back as soon as possible. That's what we need to do, guys. So I'm talking about, Roger Robinson with the toe. It looks like Warren Brinson. He's back though, so we don't have to worry about him. Just, but in all seriousness, Artie, there's a fine if you're not accurate or on time with this, from $25,000 to your first offense to $100,000 for your third and on, right? So which SEC coach do you think is the first one dinged for this?
Kirby Smart.
Year? Do you think it's Kirby?
Yeah, he doesn't care about that.
Yeah.
Look, first off, this is a. You and I spoke about this in the office. Actually, it's been a reoccurring theme for the better part of like 3 years now, talking about since NIL. This is just another step towards the professionalization of college football, right? First, coaches are regulated by the NCAA. They get money. So the NCAA or whoever this governing body is, commissioners, they're going to start implementing penalties, right? And as soon as they come up with a structured payment, a payment structure in which that they can pay the players, and the players are getting a consistent stream of income from either the school, the conferences, or the NCAA, they'll get fined too. Mark my words. But getting back to the injury thing, yeah, I think Kirby will eat the $25K, depending on who they play for the next offense. If it's a strategic game and it's a big game, he'll probably eat the $100K. But man, $100K can rack up pretty quick, depending how, when you think about it, got to come out with an injury report once a week. That's minimum like 14 weeks with the playoff expansion. That's, we're getting up there to $2 million if you're lying every week. So
yeah, I think it depends on program. I think it depends on the program. Oh, there's ADs right now.
Kirby can afford it now. He can afford it.
He can afford it. There's other programs like I don't want to ruffle any feathers. But those are like the AD. The ADs are like, hey man, we got to be careful with this. All right. I can't wait to see what comes out of that. I do want to get some. On a serious note though, here Roger Robinson doubtful with that toe after the toe surgery. Trevor Etienne doubtful with a potential suspension. But if we're talking about suspensions here, we have to also talk about Smael Mondon, Sakovi White, Bo Hewley, all arrested this summer, right? So the athletic department standards, a game suspension. Which game? That's what we don't know. We just don't know. We won't know, right? If we had that injury report this week, availability report, we would know. But like I said, it's not a conference matchup, so Georgia doesn't have to release it. So just something to keep an eye on. Good news-wise, though, Jared Wilson, Warren Brinson, Colby Young, all probable here. So that's really good, especially for Georgia's receiver room there with Colby Young. All right, because we talked about Robert Thomas and him getting dismissed there, and I think depth is really important. And with that, if you're watching on Twitter, Facebook, or YouTube at the Pulse Sports Network, we're going to be joined here by a special guest, former Georgia linebacker, Arthur's former teammate as well. 334 tackles as a dog, all SEC linebacker, or Marlo Herrera.
How you doing? How you doing?
Whoa. Let's go, Marlo.
What's up, Arthur? How you doing, buddy? How you
Good,
doing?
man. How are you?
Good.
I'm doing well. Thanks for coming in, Marlo. It's good to see you again and talk to you a little bit about the Dogs, man. It's a big game coming up, a game that you two guys played in, right? I think my first question, I'm going to go there, and kind of the similarity between the cultures in Georgia and Clemson. When you two matched up against them, did you notice that kind of similarity from Dabo Swinney and the other coaches you played in the league, and how maybe he might have been different or similar?
Yeah, I would say you always notice those top programs because you all competing for that same top spot. And so you guys have a lot of the same traits. And so playing guys on that level, you kind of see the similarities and you kind of know what you guys do the same and how both of these programs get to where they are. So you kind of know like how y'all built and the grind, and you understand the team a lot more when they're on that type of level as you.
Yeah. Did y'all know a lot of those guys too you were playing against, right? Because the recruiting pipeline right there, I mean, Georgia recruits that as well. Clemson recruits the heck out of Georgia. Did you know any of those guys? Did that create maybe any different type of feeling around like a one-on-one battle there?
Yeah, I know a few of those guys. I mean, you once you enter the rankings and do all the camps, if you well back in the days, I don't know how they do it now, but once you start doing those scouting count, rival camps, you see everybody and you start to chat, and then you start to, build a relationship. And then once you start to see those guys ball, like they know what time it is and you know what time it is. And it's just like, all right, we here now. Let's go make a statement and let me prove why I'm here and why you're there.
Yeah, exactly. And then even this year, Artie, I'll let you jump in on this too and give your take on that. But even this year, I mean, there's a lot of guys that Georgia recruited really heavily that decided to go to Clemson. I mean, Barrett Carter, they're probably one of the best inside linebackers in the country this season who we'll face on Saturday. I mean, Georgia was right there as a top school for him in state, but he chose to go to Clemson. That's just an example. But Artie, what are your feelings on that?
Yeah, I think a little different for me because like Marlo is like, he's a Georgia guy through and through. So he probably grew up with some of the guys that went to Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, right? Like, so I didn't really get I did not get the opportunity to like grow up with some of these guys. The first recruit I ever hosted was a guy named like Corey, like Crawford, maybe he's a defensive end. And the next time I saw him after I hosted him was that Clemson game we were playing him because he was the opposite end to the guy Vic Beasley, who ended up playing for the Falcons, who was a beast. But I think about what it would have been like to grow up in particularly the greater Atlanta area. Like we talk about this all the time, JC. Like just the richness of the football talent that is in the state of Georgia, and obviously there's a huge amount of a large amount of those kids end up trying to go to UGA. They go to Georgia Tech, but if you go look at the rosters of the other SEC schools or Clemson or Florida State, you're going to have a ton of dudes who are from the state of Georgia. So I didn't know a ton of the guys, but man, I know Marlo. I know a bunch of my teammates. Like, sometimes dudes, cousins were playing cousins or brothers were playing brothers. It's pretty wild once you get to when you have these kind of like border state rivalries, if you will.
Yeah, exactly. I think a lot of these guys. I mean, I know guys that grew up in Georgia, went to Clemson, and vice versa, right? So there's a lot of similarities here, and I think it's a rivalry that I'd like to see a lot more of, to be honest, and get it back to that. I'm going to go a different direction here with you two guys. I want to get you guys talking a little bit. So just talking from a positional standpoint in practice, right? Tight end linebackers. I know it's a really good guess. I bet money on it that Arthur had to come back, crack back block Marlowe. He had to at least been tasked for that once. So I want to hear, did y'all go after it at practice? How physical is that? Do y'all have any stories out of that?
Marlowe, you probably had to go against the fullbacks more than me because you were a true inside backer. But there, if you were playing Will, I guess in this case, or what do you guys call the inside linebacker away from the tight end?
Yeah, that's the Mo and the money.
If we were going like two back power, I would come down and crack on Marlowe. I do remember doing a couple of those because he's following the guard, right? His eyes are, and I'd be coming this way. But most of the time I was just wrestling with Cornelius Washington, freaking Jordan Jenkins. Trust me, dude, that was not fun. None of that was fun. But I'll let Marlowe go.
Yeah, so like our blocking scheme there, like they never came up to the inside linebacker like that, especially not me. So it's usually be like center guards and tackles that came up to me. Rarely I get them occasionally, but not too often. But I mean, we maybe past scale. That's probably the only time we've seen each other. But other than that, we didn't get physical.
Pascal probably. You probably had a few. There is, and I told this story last year on the pod, and you probably remember this, Marlo. Remember when it was so you were probably a freshman, and you maybe not even been there yet because you may have been a high school or about to be a freshman because you played as a true freshman, obviously, and Xander got under his brother Alec one time, and it was, I had never seen anything like it. And it was just one of those things that, like, Xander, if you've ever met Xander, he's about 5'9", and his little brother Alec is about 6'3", and so we always had some good laughs about that. But man, they ran like a little bit of like it was like lead backside, so I'm cutting off, and like Xander kind of comes like this, and then comes up and takes on his brother Alec, and my God, did he crack him and put him on his back? And there's a practice clip out there somewhere. It's not a game clip, but there's a practice clip. And that's when the linebackers, when they meet another big skill, it was usually a fullback, and it was like a collision, man. I bet you Carl probably had a few of them, but I'll never forget that one.
If y'all if you're just joining or wondering what we're talking about here, Artie's talking about a story about the Ogletree brothers from his time at Georgia. And that just makes so much sense. I forget that his little brother was just so much bigger than him.
Oh,
which you got to have a little man syndrome right there, just a little bit. You got to have that.
They were different human beings. Alec was a freak, dude. I mean, Marlon, you could tell him.
Yeah. They twins, so, the smaller one born before
they are twins.
Yeah, so.
Oh, my bad.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. but still, though, the same person is just completely different body types. And Alec is crazy, but Xander definitely did bring the wood sometimes when him and his brother went against each other. Probably all the time when him and Tree went against each other.
All the time, dude.
You couldn't tell they was related, honestly.
And that was back in the time too. Football was so much different. It really was. Right? You had a guy like a Marlowe, no offense, but I don't know if Georgia would have signed you as a linebacker now. They probably put you outside because of your size,
Yeah,
and now they have smaller guys.
Yeah, I played outside coming in, but
yeah, but then like that time, Nick Saban had won the national championships with this, and then Kirby was under him, and you had like guys like Dante Hightower, and those guys were like 6'4", 250 in the middle. But now you can look at Georgia's linebackers. Now they're inside. I mean, they're 225, 6'1", 6'2", where they can run.
Yeah, we had some guys that I thought ran really. Marlon, I always thought you could run really well. Ramit could run really well. I mean, Alec when Alec really opened up his stride, he could move. Like, we had an interesting scheme because it was similar. It was not the Kirby 3-4 and Saban 3-4, but it was a true 3-4. So we had like a true nose, and our outside backers were huge and long. But our inside guys could run now. right? Like Marlowe could always run, and they were like bigger, but I think they were just bigger because we were swatting so much with Coach T. I don't think we were big because like that's the body test we were recruiting. You're probably what, 245 at your heaviest when you were playing?
Yeah, 245.
Yeah, but I'd say 235 to 245 was like the range for our middle linebackers.
Yeah, and I was the biggest. I think I was probably the biggest one out of everybody.
Because Mike G was light. Mike G was long and light.
Yeah,
And
he was
then
like 220.
yeah,
For me, 230. Tree probably 220, 230.
yeah.
C-Rob, same thing.
Yes, and C-Rob is probably naturally like 205. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the reason why the middle linebackers had to run in our defense is because, you know, like you're not going to expect a Jarvis Jones or like who's playing Will on the outside or Jack or however you want to call it, or like Cornelius to go, you know, take a back out of the backfield or run with a tight end up the seam. They might do it like once a game, but you know, if I'm running a seam and let's say that front side inside linebacker is stunting and Marlowe's got to come, you know, and burn grass to come get me, it's like they got to be able to run. So I don't know the scheme as well now with Kirby, but man, I used to hate when I would have much rather have Jarvis run me than Marlowe. That's for sure. When I was running around.
Yeah.
The thing about Marlowe too is like, well, if I was coaching that defense, I would have you come off the bus first in the neck pad.
Oh yeah.
That is a sight that strikes fear in any man. I don't care who you are. It's the neck pad with the size. Okay, it's something you don't see anymore. That's why I saw Georgia Tech's linebacker, forget his name, last week against Florida State.
Yeah.
Choked out with the neck pad. I was like, all right, we're in for a game now. Let's play some football. I was like,
Yeah.
I like this.
I didn't even like the neck pad, man. It's crazy story about the neck pad. We was playing. I don't know if Arthur remembered, but I got a stinger in camp my rookie year. I hit Marlon Brown coming across the middle. I got a stinger. I didn't practice again until we practiced in the stadium.
Oh
for
yeah.
Boise State. So I didn't practice the whole summer. Boise State. I end up starting the second drive because Tree broke his foot.
Mm-hmm.
The next week we playing Marcus Lattimore, and Coach Grantham say, and obviously I seen Lattimore play the year before. That's the SEC championship year against Auburn, and so I'm like, man. He was like, yeah, y'all better go get y'all neck pad. I say, run. I need one of them neck pads. So I put the neck pad on, and everybody was talking about it. And I was just like, all right, cool. I didn't even want it at first, but I'm definitely about to keep it now since everybody.
Well, it kind of became like your signature thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, was it Florida Atlantic? You had the pick six?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just remember him grabbing it and like going up the sideline towards the student section and just seeing that net. And you're just kind of like, that's like a 1999 like linebacker.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I love it, man. And I mean, Marlo, man, you because you were in a situation, right? Like where you probably didn't anticipate getting like first team meaningful snaps week one, but then all of a sudden this all-American linebacker who's like, you probably were excited to learn from and like ease into it gets hurt. Right. And it's like, you know, the JC, you and I have talked about this extensively on this podcast. Like you just never know when your opportunity is going to come. And if you take advantage of that opportunity as a young guy, and then you all of a sudden earn the trust of the coaches, man, you'll end up being a 3-4 year starter. And Marlo, I would love for you to kind of like go into that and like your frame of mind. I've always been a confident guy, right? You've always had the skill set. Obviously, you were drafted in the NFL, all the tackles, all the stats, all SEC, but like that shit can scare the shit out of you when you're a freshman. You know what I mean? So we'd love to kind of hear your mindset during that time because I remember it very distinctly.
Yeah, during that time, I guess I always wanted to play, and I always had the confidence to think I was a starter. And getting hurt and not practicing, going back to that story, I didn't practice, so I wasn't on any special team. I wasn't being redshirted. And Boise State, we go out there, he get hurt, and then I play. And then the next week, I started gaining momentum, and then I think the third game was the Florida Atlantic game. I got the pick, and now I'm making plays. And at the same time, I know Tree is coming back.
Mhm.
And so I never paid attention to the media or anything. And the only thing that did get me down is hearing that when Coach Rick got asked about would Tree be the starter when he come back, he said, yeah, he's gonna be the starter. And in hindsight, I'm crazy for thinking that Tree couldn't start in front of me,
Yeah.
but I kept balling, and it created that trust, like Artie said, and Grantham and Coach O wanted me to be on the field.
Mhm.
And so Florida game, Tree come back, they moved me to outside linebacker that week.
Mhm.
And so I'm playing outside linebacker. Never played outside linebacker in college, but I'm playing outside linebacker on one side. Jarvis is playing on the other side, and I'm just a freshman and I'm still starting. And so being able to gain their trust allowed me to play longer. And I know multiple positions on defense, and we couldn't call defense then, but C-Rob was still telling me where I was going. But
We lost. Keep going.
but they gained confidence in me over time, and obviously the team gained confidence in me too. And as a young kid coming into this program that is Georgia, is like it's amazing to be out there. Like you kind of take it for granted at the time because you are playing, but the players that didn't play their freshman year, sophomore year, and then they start playing, so they see what you're doing. You don't feel how they feel, and so my experience is a lot different, and could have been taken for granted because I was out there just doing what I naturally do. And so over the course of the season, I led the team in tackles multiple games. Was leading the team overall in tackles, and just having fun and getting that confidence, and end up going to the SEC championship that year, and ended up starting in the SEC championship at outside linebacker against LSU. Obviously, we lost, but being able to do that and roll into the next year, and then having everybody come back is like, all right, you can either do this or do this. And so it just gave me the confidence you know, to hone in and learn, my craft.
Yeah.
And like taking a step back, JC, right? Like I know you and I were talking about like once you gain the trust of the coaches, but it's also like gain the trust of your teammates, right? Like because I know I was a third year sophomore, and Marlo was part of this like unbelievable recruiting class, right? I think it was what was you guys called like
The
the
dream
dream
team.
team or yeah, the dream team, right? But Malcolm Mitchell was in that class, Marlo was in that class, like Isaiah Crowell, like I love Isaiah. I'll never say a bad thing about him, and he was a
Yeah.
stud, dude, right? The guy's my guy, and like they had dudes everywhere. But you're naturally skeptical as like an upperclassman, or like because you hear all these things, like, but who can actually play, right? Because like you want to be able to trust your guys, and like guys will say they do X, Y, and Z, but until they get out there and go do it. And I know like me and the upperclassmen, we saw Marlo ball out in that first game against boys. We're like, oh, this is someone that we're going to be able to rely on, or at least I'm going to be able to rely on as an offensive player. Like he's going to make the tackle, he's going to know where to be, when to be there, and he's going to be a leader on and off the field. And it's like that means a lot. Like when your teammates put that trust in you too, because like coaches are coaches, so there's always that the hierarchy thing, but like these are also your boys. You know what I mean? Like Marlo is my boy, right? Like no matter how long it's been since we've talked to each other, it's like it's my teammate, love him to death, right?
Yeah.
But when you get that trust in the field, it's like there's an anxiety level that like decreases as a teammate because you're like, oh, this kid can now help like this class of his that's so talented come along the way, right? And I think that is something that is not often talked about, right?
Yeah, and to put the cherry on top of that, just like those guys were skeptical of us because at the time we was one of the highest UGA classes in a long time.
Yeah,
Recruiting
I think ever
classes.
for Coach Rick.
Yeah, probably for Coach Rick. Yeah, I think so. But those guys, like after a while, obviously it was a lot of ballers in that class, and so they took us in and really embraced us at the camp because we didn't back down, we didn't shy away. None of us, and
No,
so it
not
was
one of you.
but that's another story for another day. But
Yeah.
we had the confidence, and those guys believed in us and took us in and supported us a lot. Like I can definitely say, like I love Arthur. He know that. But it's those guys that take you in that make you feel at home and make you feel comfortable. That allows you, if you can actually ball, it'll give you that extra boost of confidence because they supporting you and they actually want you on the field with them. It's not like you're taking a spot. We're helping each other grow and win. And so that's what those guys did for us.
Yeah. And I think just to tie it kind of into this team and, hearing from players over the last few years now, and they started this, oddly enough, the 2021 season, obviously national championship season at Georgia and Kirby Smart. They wanted to get these guys closer, and a lot of kind of what you guys are talking about and building that trust with each other. So they started doing these skull sessions. And Georgia fans, if they follow closely, they'll know about this as well. It's been reported a lot. And we had Ja'Cory Thomas, who I'm excited to watch this year at safety. He's a guy that's kind of unheralded, really talented kid, played behind some NFL guys, but he's going into it this year with, a chance to really carve out a role for himself in the start defense. And he talked about it. But skull sessions, when they get up in front of the team and it kind of explain their why they play the game, their backstory, any struggles they're having or what have you, and just kind of explain that to their teammates and that kind of setting. They get in groups as well, and everybody has to talk. It kind of forces, I'm not sure if guys love it, but it kind of forces them to know each other. When right, that guy beside you in battle, if you know his why and what have you, then it's so much easier to play, for him and for each other, right? I just thought that was interesting for this team and how they've done it, because they did it 21 and they're doing it now every year as a part of the program. And I think it really helps for my, outside looking in and hearing from the players, it helps from year to year. As you have that roster attrition with the transfer portal, NFL guys, and then graduates, helps it year to year kind of stay cohesive and a player-led team more than a coach-led team for at least, the little small part that they can be player-led.
Yeah, I mean, it's and I think Marl will probably appreciate this because I always look at what Kirby has built there, and I'm like, I went to University of Georgia, but that place is like it is a different run machine at this point. But I do think one thing that Coach Rick and Kirby have in common is they understand the importance of like digging a little bit deeper and trying to get these guys personally connected, right? And Coach Rick had the hot seat in the mat drills, right? And that sounds like that Kirby's kind of got his version of the hot seat in the mat drills. And like, it's tough to be vulnerable as like a man and an adult and trying to, amongst a bunch of alpha males, 85 of them, everyone's trying to play for a spot. And you ultimately, what you want to do is build that trust with players, right? And your teammates. And I think Coach Rick did a great job of that. And I think obviously Kirby has been able to do that, exponentially, greater than Mark Rick did, because look at the success that they've had. But I will say this, like, I always appreciate that about Coach Rick, because he tried to make that personal connection, not just between him and his players, but he wanted his players all to be there for each other as well. And I thought he did a good job of that.
No. Now, Marlo, you mentioned a certain team that y'all played in the season opener in 2011, and actually I had that in my notes for you. So we're going to build off that and go into Clemson. We'll get into Clemson here. Thanks for being a part of the show, Marlo, too, talking some ball with us. So my question was, and bringing up Boise State as an example, is the challenge of playing in season openers, right? And how is it different than anything else? Obviously, right, the different games aren't the first game of the season. We know that. But is there anything beyond that as far as preparation that's a little weird, something that gets you off a little bit compared to when you're mid-season and you're rolling? I know you two guys probably don't like thinking about that game. The uniforms, I loved them. Maybe it's just because I was like 13 years old at the time, but I loved them. Aaron Murray hates him. He always says that on the show. But regardless, what are the differences there in your guys' opinion?
That specific game, I don't. That was my first college game, so after a while you get adjusted to it. But I think the hype was over the uniforms for that game. I like the uniforms, but that's what kind of magnified that game a little bit more, is that it was the uniforms. Obviously, Kellen Moore was a great college player, and
Totally.
so you had this great college quarterback, and you have these ugly uniforms that everybody hate from Georgia, that killing the tradition. That was the only thing about that game that kind of stood out for me. Other than that, you still prepare the same way. Like we didn't, from that game into my last, college first game, the preparation wasn't any different. We prepared. I mean, it was just a uniform thing that made people, want to magnify the game.
Yeah.
But
So you say it was like kind of a distraction, the uniform situation.
yeah, it wasn't for us, but it was something that people talked about.
Yeah, I mean, look, like Boise State was a good football team. Like if you go back and look at that run, that Kellen Moore run, I think he won like 60 something games or something like that. They like 12 or 13 games a year. So like, and he was a great quarterback, right? Obviously not the strongest arm, not the end, but like there's a reason why he's had success as a play caller in the NFL. It's not easy to do. But I think what happened with that game is we were still kind of as a team, and Marlo was just like, they threw him in the game, so he was playing. So he's probably just like out there balling just because like he's like, I don't know what else to do, so I'm just gonna go ball. But like the guys who were returning, we had a tough season the year before. Like, right, we went like 6-6, 6-7 because we ended up losing the bowl game, which to UCF and like Memphis. It was a disaster. And they kept Coach Rick. We thought they were gonna fire Coach Rick. And so I think we knew how much talent we had, but we were just like trying to find our way. And we went 0-2 to start that season, and then we won 10 straight games, right? But I think when people think about that game, they're like, they thought we got like blown out like 40-0 in Atlanta to Boise State. You know what I mean? But in reality, it's like, I think we lost like 24-17. Kellen Moore like threw the ball everywhere, got his team in the right position, was a field general, and like Murray just what?
I hate to interrupt. It was 35-21.
Was it 35-21?
Yeah,
all right.
a little bit further off there.
All right,
the 20.
all right. Well,
touchdowns.
So you know what I just heard, Marlo? That J.C. Shelton was the one who was complaining on his what was it, AOL Instant Messenger back then, and
it was AOL. It was AOL for sure.
So all I'm saying is this, man. Like we did not think that the jerseys were a distraction. But it's usually the people who don't play the games and are sitting on the couch that make the distractions something more than they are. You know what I mean? That's just like the reality of it.
Dude, that is fandom. That is fandom right there, especially in the SEC. My gosh. Not to harp too much on Boise State. Let's get to Clemson. All right. Now, Marlo, I'd love to hear your takes in here. If you have anything to add, please jump in. I know we got you in here last minute. So I'm going to touch on why Georgia can win big here. UGA's defense, we talked about, if you missed the first show, we talked about Cade Klubnik, his struggles, can be better this year, at a 55 rating last year, right? He has some improving to do. He has an athletic side to him that he can take off, right? So that has posed a problem for Georgia in the past. It's posed a problem for every defense in football history in the past, if you can run like that and throw it well. But I think that Georgia's not going to be afraid to load the box to keep that run game in check, and Phil Maffa, who I think is really talented. He's going to be really the bell cow from them this season. No Will Shipley anymore. Considering the talent in the front seven that will work and make Klubnik, win the game, make big plays to force the ball down the field. I think that really, what does that do? It forces into a secondary that's headlined by two-time All-American Malachi Starks, right? If you're going to force it in his zone to make a play, and he is a ball hawk, and he's going to be in the right spot, right? He's been in this defense. This is his third year. It seems like it was yesterday. He was just a freshman phenom. I think that's a really dangerous place to be, guys. I really do. And the Tigers, at least defensively, that front seven, one of the best in the sport. UGA's offensive line though is top 2, and they're not number 2. Carson Beck's going to have time to throw, really to help soften that group and allow the run game to get some chunks. I know we talked about the running backs. Georgia might be missing number 1 and number 2, Trevor Etienne and Roderick Robinson. So that puts a lot of weight on a walk-on junior and Cass Jones, which we've got a really cool comment that really makes sense for this. We want to throw it up, right? Kirby Smart loves Cass Jones. We've seen Cass do some stuff in the past as well, right? Might be his opportunity, and really on third down as that back who can really receive as well. But Artie and I talked about it last show. It's like the talent that Georgia pulls in on a regular basis at running back is just, you might not know their name or see them take big time snaps yet, but they have every bit of ability to run through those lanes that this offensive line is going to make. I know Artie's agreeing with me on that. So you have that running game, I think, balance, and Artie, you two, and Marlo, you played against him in practice, and Mike Bobo dialing up plays. That balance he really creates with the run and the pass game, setting each other up. I feel really good about what Dom Lovett, Dylan Bell, and Oscar Delp bring, right, as a complement, stable of weapons. So I think that's why Georgia could win big. Those things play out that way. It's how I see it, at least. Artie, Marlo, if y'all have anything to add into it, please do.
I'll start. I'll start. Bobo do know how to mix it up. Obviously, last year Bobo did more passing than I ever seen him do in my life. But it's different when you have a guy like Carson Beck back there and you have the athletic receivers. It reminds me so much of our team, honestly, because we had the same kind of build. We had, obviously, our running backs was a lot more, athletic, and there was a key piece to our team then. But I think if ETN is healthy, then we're gonna see, that run game like the end of the year with Kendall Milton, and that run that he had every week, 100, touchdowns every week. So I think if he's healthy, then we'll probably see a heavier dose of running. If he's not healthy, then it's going to look like last year, the start of the year, throwing the ball everywhere, because we have the athletes. We have a lot of young wide receivers. It's a lot of young guys, and obviously some of those guys returning, but it's a lot of speed there. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be obviously the tight ends. I can't wait to see that play. But
just like ETN, he's just the suspension is kind of the only thing that people are wondering about. We don't know if he's going to be suspended or not for the offseason arrest, but I think he is healthy. But if he does play, you're right. If he does play, I think Georgia's going to have their whole bag of tricks ready to go.
Yeah, we haven't. If you haven't heard anything, I know what that used to mean for us. We not worried about it no more. That's that is what it is.
I like that take.
If he wasn't playing, you would know he wasn't playing.
Yeah.
Right?
Kind of. Yeah. That's why, now that y'all say that, I'm thinking about that, and it makes a lot of sense, to be honest.
Kirby,
Usually I'll have some type of idea. Like I'll have some percentage. I've heard Jack.
They're on that Les Miles LSU disciplinary program, man. You know what I mean? It's like
out for Tennessee Tech.
Yeah, maybe they're playing, man, and to be honest, I think he should play. It's like he knows he made a mistake. It's like, I'm sure now he definitely got punished for it. And I'm sure they did something for him in the offseason, right? But it's too big of a game. And I think Kirby's like, they sat him down and talked to him. It's like, we need you to go off and do your thing. And, I think like Marlo probably has a better perspective on Bobo than I do, because he went against him for 4 years straight on defense, right? It's like, it's kind of like how I feel like I could call their defense, Grantham's defense, by the end of my college career, because it so well. But like I said on Monday's show, JC, it's like Bobo won't be afraid to run this Cass Jones kid to death if they're getting movement up front. right? Obviously, if ETN plays, it's a different story, and they're going to use him differently. But if Bobo has an opportunity to run it down someone's throat, he's going to do it. And I think Carson Beck, having him back, there's a reason why he's going to be a first-round pick, most likely. Knock on wood for him. And if they need to throw it, they will. But I promise you, if Bobo knew that they were going to win the game, and if they had to win, he had to run the ball 100 damn times with like two tights and a fullback, he'd do it. And he'd laugh there and cackle and do that stuff that Mike Bobo does that Marlo knows. It's like nuts and crazy. But I'll never forget the second half of the Auburn game in 2011 when we just ran power and lead the whole second half. And that's all we ran. Two tights and a fullback, power and lead, power and lead, power and lead. And we ended up beating that ass in Sanford that day. So don't sleep on Bobo running that rock, man.
Yeah. With that, Marlo has to jump off. Man, we really appreciate your time. And I know everybody listening to us live also did. You're
Marlo,
GG, brother.
Marlo, love you, brother. Congratulations on your wedding and everything else that you've had success with, man. I know it's been too long. I wish I could see you in person, but love you, man.
Oh, Marlo, when'd you get married, man? Sorry to keep you a second.
Oh, last May.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was in July, so I was wondering if we had this similar.
Oh, congrats.
Dude, you too. Absolutely. Now, one thing, I'll sign you off real quick. Prediction. Give me a point. Georgia is a 13.5-point favorite.
You want my score?
Yeah, got to jump off the score.
Man, 38-7.
38-7. All right, dude. That's a butt whooping right there, baby.
Yeah, that's what it's gonna be tomorrow. Honestly, it's gonna be. It's not tomorrow. I mean, it's Saturday.
Saturday. You got it.
But that's what it's gonna be. It's gonna be one of those type of games.
Absolutely. All right, brother. We'll let you go. Or Marlo, we really appreciate it.
Hey,
Marlo,
have a great day. Love you, brother.
Go Dogs.
Take care. All right.
Go Dogs. Appreciate you, JC. You know I come anytime, like I told you before.
Absolutely, man. We'll get in touch. See you, bud.
Yes, sir.
All right, man. That was fun to have him on. Watch you two work too. Good stuff.
It's been a long time since I see Marlo, man. It's been too long.
Yeah, dude. I ran into him. The funny story, and I didn't get to tell it when he was here, but probably makes it less awkward anyway. But little young redhead JC, white as Christmas, goes to a summer Mark Richt camp, and I think 13. I think it was 13, and going into my sophomore season, right? I show up thinking we're going to be in the indoor complex at Butts-Meier. We were outside on the turf for 6 hours, and it was 90.
Good.
It was 94 plus.
Good.
The only thing is, I just wore the tank top that they gave us, so
get some sun.
So I knew I was going to get burnt, and I was like, we're going to do this, man. So and I didn't know this was just kind of the warm up part. I was already dog tired before we got to the drills.
Right.
We got to the drills, and Marlo was over there coaching the linebackers, right? And that's when I knew he was a good dude. He was a good dude. He was helping everybody he could, right? He was over there with Elker. Remember Mike Elker?
Yeah.
Or was it Elko? No, it's not Elko.
No, Elko, yeah. So that was 2014 then, because that Elko was okay. I was there. And that's when they could start. That's when players started getting paid for summer camps. But Marlo's a great dude, man. I always had an immense amount of respect for him and how he just jumped in and played and had this like confidence about him to be like, oh, I've been here for 3 years. I'm like, well, no, you've been here for 3 weeks, but you're balling out, right? You know what I mean? So
it was cool, man. It was cool. And then they give us a break, right? Our break is before we went on to 7-on-7s, and it's like we're 4 hours in at this point, running in the sun in 90+ degree Georgia heat. And we go inside in the air conditioning, and they have Domino's. We each get a large pizza before we go run 7-on-7s. And I eat like half of that thing. I'm like, dude, I'm not. I don't know. I'm gonna fall out. I'm literally gonna fall out. I make it through, thank God. I make a couple plays, whatever. Get home. There's boils all down my arms. Yeah. Oh, it was just the worst sunburn of all time.
Yeah, you probably too. It's at the same time, like you probably had a bit of like what do they call it? Sunstroke, heat stroke. Like when you have
probably. Oh yeah, absolutely. I was not prepared.
You're lucky to throw up that Domino's on Coach Elko's feet, man.
Dude, he would have.
Yeah, that guy's tapped.
Dude, he said some stuff I can't say on this program right now because my mom was watching.
Don't worry. There's a lot of things Coach has said to me that I can't repeat.
All right, let's move on. All right, we got a few more things to get through here. Why Clemson could cover. Already tell me if I'm crazy or not. Don't sleep on Clemson's depth. I think that's one thing we know, people are kind of getting consumed with is the record last year, the players they lost, Will Shipley included, because he's an all ACC back, All-American as well. Don't sleep on this depth. I mean, front seven wise, even offensive line, they have really good tight end and Brenning Stool, right? Running back as well. Receiver is the question mark, right? Because there's young guys we haven't seen yet, right? But they're deep. Right? This is a deep team. This is a Dabo Swinney team that he's been able to keep a lot of guys in. Yeah, he hasn't got transfers, but he's been able to keep a lot of guys in, and that's how they're able to do what they're able to do. Other than Whiteout, it's a loaded roster that has played a lot of football, right? Been in tough environments, close games last year. They come out on top on some of those close games. I mean, they played Florida State down to the wire and lost in overtime. Cade Clement fumble really kind of caused that for the most part. The Tigers – need to slow the game down in here, in my opinion. Already, let's think about, how could they cover, make it close, even possibly win? Slow the game down, keep it out of Beck's hands, right? Don't let Georgia go on a 12-play, 6-minute drive, right? Don't let them do what Tech did to Florida State the other day, right? Maffa and that offensive line, the offensive line returns 3 guys that have at least 25 starts, which is incredible, and they're healthy, right? And they have to capitalize on mistakes. Look how, how Georgia lost the SEC championship, why we were down to Auburn and South Carolina. Execution and mistakes, right? We shot ourselves in the foot. That's how you can beat a team like Georgia, or thinking this year, Oregon, Ohio State, Texas, those teams. And the only reason those games turned out the way they did, I think, at least in the first part, in the first half when Georgia was down, is, like I said, execution, mistakes. A season opener is going to have plenty of those, right? And the ball could land in Clemson's favor and more of those, right? Just sometimes it comes down to luck in that situation. But Georgia's going to have to answer and such to do that. But I think that's the way that Clemson kind of has their game here. Can they do it? We'll get to that in a minute if we think they can or can't. But I'm trying to give you an idea of how it might go if Clemson does find themselves in a position to win it at the end. Artie, am I crazy at all?
No, I don't think you are. But I think when you say slow it down, what I hear and how I interpret that is what I talked about on Monday. And it to me, it's for Clemson, it all starts with Klubnik, right? And what I mean by that is the first half of the season last season, he was very erratic, very unpredictable is the wrong word, but just like he was young and he relied heavily on his athleticism. He had sparks as a true freshman, and then he was a full-time guy last year. But I think if you look at his progress that he made in the second half of last season, and then, earning the trust of his teammates, and I know I probably sound like a broken record, but that is so important in the game of football, particularly at the quarterback position. And I think that if we see a Klubnik who is calm, cool, collective, in command of the offense, not rattled, makes plays, smart plays with his feet, not erratic plays, and then also gets his team in the best position possible to execute and doesn't hurt his team with turnovers, then I think we could be in a very, very close football game, because we can make fun of Dabo Swinney and call him corny and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, he's got 2 national championships. He's been the head football coach at Clemson since, I think, 2010, 2009, and he has won a lot of football games, right? He has built a program there that is one that is going to last. So we talk about not a lot of turnover in the portal and not bringing a lot of, what that tells me is he has a full roster of guys that he recruited out of high school and that have bought into his system and bought into the culture. And that's a dangerous recipe if you're playing against them. Now, fortunately for us, we also have a pretty good quarterback who is not really erratic, who doesn't make a lot of mistakes. We have a seasoned football team. Yeah, we lack some depth in some areas because of injury, but I think ultimately we have the best head football coach in college football, and I think we have the best program and the most continuity of the past 5 years. So I think a lot of that cancels out what Clemson has. And why I think this will be a great game is because I think both teams have something to play for, right? Clemson wants to bounce back in a real way because they've kind of had 2 funky years compared to their previous 10. And I think UGA feels like, dude, like Florida State, right? Like Alabama, like what's like. I feel like we were probably one of the best 4 teams in the country, and I think they want to go out and prove that. Now I get it, top 12 teams, blah 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 blah. But I think we're in for a treat on Saturday because as much as I would love for us to blow them out, it's like I wouldn't be surprised if it's a 7-point ball game going into the fourth quarter, right? I think Clemson's going to be a good football team this year. Will they beat us? I don't think so, but there's a world where it could be a close football game, no doubt.
Yeah. Artie, do you want to go ahead and give your score prediction, or you want me to go first? I'll give you the choice. You're the guest.
Well, I just went on a rant, so I'll say this. I do think Georgia wins. I think they cover the spread. I think we win by 17. I think it's going to be a 37-20 game. We probably pull away that last 7 in the fourth quarter, but I think it's going to be like a 30-20 game going to the fourth quarter. Right? I don't think it's I don't think we're going to be up 42-0, but I do think we cover. I think we win handily, and I do think Klubnik probably throws a pick or 2 in the second half, and that's what separates us in the ball game.
Yeah, 37-20. I like it. 37-20 means Georgia covers. It also means the over hits of 48.5. So those are your plays for that game. And Artie and I are going JC versus Artie against the spread this year. We both started off 2-0 last week, week 0, Georgia Tech and FSU under and Georgia Tech covering, and ended up winning. I'll say this before I get into mine. Like, Clemson's this first game as a double-digit betting underdog in 12 years. UGA is 10-14. No, sorry, 10 of 14. My notes are an absolute mess on that. 10 of 14, so they only lost 4, they've won 10, when favored by less than 17 over the last 4 years. Right? So good against the spread. This number is good for Georgia, historically. I think it's going to be down to really the running back situation with either Etienne, Robinson, Cass Jones, Branson Robinson, Nate Frazier, running back. Whoever it is, I don't think Bobo is going to care. I don't think this team, and Artie, I love what you said on Monday about how you took that experiences that you had with, playing under Bobo and seeing how he calls games. When you guys had that attrition, everybody remembers that mid-2000s and 2016 as well, when we just had so much attrition there at running back with injuries. We still ran the rock, baby. It really didn't matter because the offensive line, and that's why you recruit the offensive linemen than you do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And you develop them. You get them in shape. You rotate them in, right? Georgia, they always rotate them. You're going to see 7 different offensive linemen on offense for Georgia. Michael Morris and Monroe Freeling, expect them to rotate in, right? They keep those guys fresh. They want monsters up there, and they keep them that because then it's not a big deal with who's back there at running back because they know their job anyway. They're talented, but that's because they played at the University of Georgia. They wouldn't be if they weren't. I don't think it's a huge deal. What I'm saying is I don't think it's going to change, and I credit Arthur with solidifying that in my mind. I think we'll see both Oscar Delp and Ben Urasek, who we really haven't talked about as much because we don't know anything about him since he joined the team this summer. We know what he did at Stanford, but he got hurt last year, right? Really good with the rock in his hands. I think we'll both see them on the field in that 12 personnel, right? And I think he might be an added piece in that running attack. I think the Tigers are going to challenge that run, right, with some guys out. I mean, if I was a defensive coordinator, I would too. I was like, prove it, right? If you got guys who are inexperienced at running back, prove it. I think Bobo's going to use that to his advantage and use the misdirections and the motions that he's really good at and what he did last year and Todd Monken did 2 years before that. Right? They're going to pound the rock, set up the pass, in my opinion. Extremely balanced attack. We talked about that with Marlowe. And I think Beck has the keys here, right, to run this offense and get them into the right play. I don't see them getting into unfavorable looks with Beck there, seeing everything the way he does. He sees the field really, really well, even pre-snap. All right, so here's how I think it's going to play out here. Georgia gets an early lead. Clemson keeps it close throughout the first half. UGA protects the football, right, begins to impose their will and that depth, right, and that separates them headed into the fourth quarter, right? Klubnik has the opportunities to get the Tigers back in the game, but I think Georgia puts him under so much fire, and that secondary just eats. right? I think it's just overwhelming a kind of game for Clemson. But they stick in there. It's going to be probably the most physical game of the weekend, right? I think Miami, Florida, that's going to be a good one too. But the way these teams are built, how they know they like to win football games is both physicality and opposing their will. So this is going to be a big-time clash. And I think that first half is going to be some maybe execution here and there as a season opener. But as far as physicality and putting your head in there, it's going to be kind of like old school football a little bit in today's age, at least comparing it to that. So I like Georgia 30-13. I'm going to do that again so I can clip it. I like Georgia 30-13. I like them to cover, and I like the under hits at 48.5. So that's where I'm at. We're pretty much the same on that, Artie. We might just tie the whole time, but I think this is when we separate here, Artie and JC versus the spread. We're going to pick 5 games here. I got them here. Artie, you're looking at them, aren't you? We've got Miami at Florida. Miami's 2.5-point favorite here. I told somebody the other day, it was a college football, it was a betting show. They were asking about this game, and I was like, it's the battle between the two coaches that I don't trust. So a really difficult one. But Cam Ward is kind of the factor here. If he can gel enough within this offense to use his legs and his arm, right? Because he killed it last year at Washington State. But can you do it in the SEC? I think Florida, when you look at that program, they've got to win, right? At least Miami had a winning season last year. But I'm going to go – it's a 2.5. So if Florida was on the road here, Miami would be favored. I think Gainesville – I think Gainesville is rocking, and I think Florida gets a win.
Disagree. I think Miami wins. I think Miami. I just.
It's a 2.5, dude. A 2.5-point spread is literally a pick 'em. It's just because it's the road. So I don't blame you.
So sorry, I was at my desk here. Look, I'll start this one. I'm taking North Dakota State to cover.
10.5.
I know a lot of people who have. Well, I say a lot. I have close friends that play football in North Dakota State. There is a tradition there that is rich. They have legitimate NFL talent on that roster, and the guys that aren't NFL guys are tough kids, and they know what they're doing, like top to bottom. Like it's a real program, right? I know it sounds funky and all that, but it is a real program with real resources, and they develop their guys, and those guys stay for 4 or 5 years. They don't transfer. It's just kind of how it is, right? Colorado, there's been a ton of noise, right? Not as much as last year, but still a ton of noise. They do have a lot of attrition, right? I don't know how many of their freshmen that they brought in are going to play. I know they got the tackle. The good news for Colorado is they have athletes, right? They have a good quarterback, but they need an offensive line and they need a running back because I think the guy that they had last year, that kind of running back, tailback, receiver guy is gone. So I like North Dakota State to cover. Not saying they're going to win, but I wouldn't be surprised if it's a bit of a barn burner for Colorado and Coach Brown.
Yeah, I'm with you. North Dakota State to cover, just because you mentioned it, toughness, right? This is a huge game for them. It's an opportunity not against a really good team because we all know how many games Colorado won last year, right? It's more about an opportunity on the national stage because of the hype that Deion Sanders, Travis Hunter, and Shadur Sanders and that program has attracted since starting last season. So I think it's an opportunity nationally to really make a statement, and they're going to enjoy that. So I like North Dakota State to cover that too. I don't think they win. Notre Dame at Texas A&M. Really interesting game here. Okay, Texas A&M is favored, number 20 ranked, over Notre Dame, who's number 7. This is at Kyle Field. Gives you an idea why that number is 3. But also Notre Dame, their projected starting left tackle, who was the gem of their class last year. They lost two tackles to the NFL all season, right? This kid was coming in. He was going to get his first start. He was really looking well in practice. He's out for the season. And it was 3 weeks before the season opener. So it's been a little over 2.5 weeks now since that happened. They had a competition at right tackle in the first place. So they've had to really mix and match these guys, and I think that's a huge ask when you go into the SEC and you're playing one of the better defensive line units in the country, really. I mean, I know they lost Walter Nolan. This is going to be a really good defensive line. I put money on that itself, that they're going to be really good this year. Mike Elko coaches them really well. So I think that's the factor for me here is why I'm taking A&M. Yeah, I mean, I like Marcus Freeman. I don't think this has a big barometer on Notre Dame's season as a whole, because I think they get that offensive line cohesiveness throughout the season eventually, right? And then maybe they can make a run because they have a lot of talent. That's just my thoughts on there. Artie, who you taking?
Texas A&M. I think I love Elko. I think he's a great defensive coach. I think he's going to have that defense humming. I mean, he's never been a head coach before with that type of talent, right? And what I mean by that is, Duke, good program. He built that up to be a pretty damn good program, but they don't have, if you look at across their rosters, right, and you go player by player, I don't care how many guys transfer to Texas A&M. Texas A&M has some dogs, right? And I think Elko is going to have them playing disciplined defensive football. And my guess is not all. There's going to be growing pains for Texas A&M this year. Don't get me wrong, but I think more times than not, Elko is going to have his defense playing well enough to put his team in a position to win. So, a lot of it will come down to, can the offense make plays? And I think they will. I think this will be a statement game for him. Don't forget, the starting quarterback for Notre Dame was Elko's quarterback at Duke last year, right? If anyone knows how to stop him or his weaknesses, it's Elko, right? So, in my opinion, I think Texas A&M is gonna come out firing at home, and it's gonna be a statement win for that program. Yeah. But we'll see how it goes.
Connor Weigman, Connor Weigman too. They're a wild card because we don't know. We don't have a big sample size from Connor, and we, entirely new staff, lost some really, really good players in the portal, but they still have a lot of talent there. Wild card, but they can make a huge statement here and jump up rankings as well. Next one, we'll actually skip that one. I'll get that one last. Already, let's go Penn State at West Virginia. Penn State's an 8-point favorite, and I'll go Penn State. Just almost an automatic 10-win team now in the Big Ten, right? So I'm not saying they're overrated. What I'm saying is West Virginia, this is a massive game for them because they shocked college football a little bit if you watch closely in the Big 12 last year with how they play, right? Green is a great quarterback as far as dual threat goes, right? They have a stable of running backs that are right up there with the best in the country, totaled for over like 1,700 yards, almost 20 touchdowns last year. Both of those guys are back. All right, the defense retained a lot of talent. It could be a tough team, okay? And you add in the fact that they're playing at West Virginia. I know Pat McAfee, former Mountaineer, I read that they're closing schools this week on Friday because Pat McAfee was doing his show there, right? His return home, and traffic was so bad, so they had to close schools. That's what I read. I think that's how it explains to you how big this matchup is for that town and this team. So I fully expect this to be a dogfight. I really do. And we're putting a lot of stock on Drew Aller for Penn State. And I don't think I feel for the kid because this is a lot of hype for not a big sample size and coming off a freshman season. So he's going to have a lot on his shoulders here. Can he do it? Maybe. We'll see. But I just love West Virginia in this spot.
I'm with you. West Virginia to cover. I like it a lot. I think they have an opportunity to outright win this game. Penn State's a good football team. Franklin's recruited very well. I know people. I don't like to say it's overrated because I think to win 10 games in the Big Ten, multiple years, to go to multiple Rose Bowls, to win as much as he has since really his first year there, it's like I don't think he's overrated, right? Unless your parameter or like the standard for you as a college football fan is if you don't win a national championship, you're not a good head coach. I don't adhere to that. I don't think it makes sense. I don't think it makes sense, right? Like in reality, there's probably 6 programs in the country who like have the pedigree to actually win a national championship. All of 6 have won one in the past 15 years, but not many others have, right? And I think Franklin's a good football coach. I think Penn State's a good program. I just think like for all the reasons you said, Morgantown is a very tough place to play. It always has been ever since the Big East days, when West Virginia was playing against the BCs, the Louisvilles, and so on and so forth. I think they're a much improved team. They had a good season last year. They got things moving in the right direction. And West Virginia, for whatever reason, does not produce a lot of in-state talent. Shout out White Chocolate and Jason Williams and Randy Moss. But outside that, not a ton of guys. But they do pick and do attract NFL talent. They got NFL guys all across the roster for the past 10 years. So I think West Virginia takes that game. Covers. Wouldn't be surprised if they outright win. I saw that you skipped over my second favorite team in college football, Boston College.
I did it on purpose. I wanted to be best for last because I know you stinking love that program. So I'll let you take it away. Go ahead.
Near and dear to my heart. My mother's a Boston College graduate. My sister's a Boston College graduate. She was a track athlete there. I was able to fall in love with the game of football because of Boston College football players growing up. I knew a few of them, and they helped me along the way as I kind of navigated learning how to play football as a freshman in high school to ultimately getting an opportunity to play at the University of Georgia. So shout out to them. Shout out to the BC Eagles. I also noticed that before last week, the early spread of this game was 22.5. And I was like, that's a lock for BC because I didn't like Florida State. 16.5. I think people are starting to wake up to Florida State. Let's see if that true freshman who is staring down Georgia Tech has also taken a sip of the reality coffee. Who knows? They may have not. But I still think BC covers. Again, I understand the SEC fan base does not really care about what goes on in Chestnut Hill. I still do. Bill O'Brien, who people seem to hate, but if you remember correctly, his first stint as a head football coach in college was at Penn State right after Joe Paterno in that mess of a situation where people thought they were going to get a death penalty. Bill O'Brien took that job, not an easy job to take, had them back-to-back winning seasons in his 2 seasons there. Then he obviously got the Houston Texans job, right? That tells me that A, he knows how to win at college football, and B, I get it, he's a butt of a joke to a lot of people in the NFL. He brought a ton of different types of Houston Texans teams to the playoffs, and Nick Saban thought he was a good enough football coach to be the offensive coordinator there, and he coached a Heisman winner. So, in my opinion, I think BC is going to be much improved this year, and I think they're on the track to have a great situation with Bill O'Brien. But as for this game, at this time, I think FSU is much worse than what we even saw last week. I think that they have a lot of work to do, and I like BC. I don't think BC will win, but I don't think that they're going to get blown out by more than 16 points.
Yeah. I mean, at Boston College last year, they lost by 2 points to FSU. Yeah. And that was at the height of FSU's dominance last year.
Yeah.
So
with their quarterback.
That. Yeah. Then in Castellanos, he's going to have a great season. I mean, based on last year, they're able to keep that kind of cohesiveness together because he's so dangerous as a scrambler, right?
He's like a poor man's Kyle Murray.
He kind of is, yeah. And I saw a lot of comparisons. You might have too, since you're saying that, a lot of comparisons about that this week. I think that's going to provide some real issues to a defensive line that got absolutely knocked off the ball last week, right? So not only do they have to play a team who's hungry, who's really hungry, they have to play a team that has a dual threat quarterback like that, which takes the defender away, right? You're going to gas the defensive line eventually. So either Florida State's defensive line plays crazy good or similar to last week. And then that's when Boston College can cover this. Definitely. 16.5.
Away
we're
from
only
BC,
different by one pick.
I know we got to go, but away from BC, like all that nonsense with Florida State last year at the end of the night, like all of it. And like, look, I don't like crapping on college teams because I love these kids, and even if I don't know them, I want them to have good careers and all that stuff. But there's a lot of chatter in the media and fan bases. If they lose to BC and they start out this year 0-2, it's like, I hope Danny Cannell can just, take a step back.
They're just going to blame all the players they lost in the transfer portal, but they gained a lot in the transfer portal too. So that's where they're going to go. That's where they're going to go.
Excuse,
but
whatever. But
we digress. So Artie and I are only off on one pick. I like Florida. He likes Miami. Your other ones we like together. Artie's been a great show. We'll go back to see 30-13 for me. Georgia wins and does cover. No, yeah. And Artie has 37-20, right?
37-20 cover.
Should have wrote that down. But we got him. We got him. It's out there in the ether now. It's out there forever. And I think we're going to do the season opener. I've got a new tradition I want to usher in. Artie can tell me how you feel about it. But if you've blessed us with your view tonight and you're a Georgia Bulldogs fan, I'm sure you are. I got a little something cooked up for you and a little inside baseball here. I actually mashed this up for my wedding last month. And we entered, me and my wife, the reception with this. And the audience being 80% Georgia fans, really, it made a splash. And I had a feeling. I think God told me. He was like, dude, if you do this, everybody's going to have chills when you walk in. It's just going to be electric. It absolutely was. You could cut the electricity with a knife. And it was a huge hit. The DJ even asked if he could kind of suggest it to people. It worked really, really well. So I'm going to play that for you guys. And it gets your mind right. I titled it, Get Your Mind Right. As a Georgia Bulldog fan, folks, we'll let this go.
Go, dude.
Glory to old Georgia. And now a new breed of Bulldog stands ready to take the field of battle, to assume the reins of the Georgia Bulldogs and continue that tradition, understanding that there is no tradition more worthy of envy, no institution worthy of such loyalty as the University of Georgia. As we prepare for another meeting between the hedges, let all the Bulldog faithful rally behind the men who now wear the red and white with two words, two simple words, which express the sentiments of the entire Bulldog nation.
Bulldogs, baby.
That was awesome. Hey, gets me going every time, boys. We'll end it at that. Artie, it's been great having you on. Can't wait for Saturday, man. I'm sure we'll be texting back and forth. Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta at noon Eastern. Everybody enjoy college football this weekend. Man, it is here, and it's that first week always hits a little different. But we're going to be here for the next 6 months doing this. I can't wait, man. It's going to be so exciting. Have a good night, Artie. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you next week on Monday.
All right, brother. Go Dogs.